I moved out after a fight with my parents that summer. It wasn't dramatic, just a slow-burning argument about money, my job, and how little I shared with them. My dad called me a stranger in my own house. My mom said I was tossing away the life they'd planned. I said things I regret, packed a laundry basket with clothes, grabbed my laptop and left before sunset. I drove for hours, windows down, warm air blowing, a sinkhole in my stomach. A college friend heard I needed a place. He knew a guy, Tom, who needed a roommate. Travels a lot for work, he said. Chill. You'll barely see him. That suited me. I wanted quiet space to cool off and a chance to prove I could stand on my own. I met Tom at a coffee shop near the house. He was tall, buzz-cut, clean clothes with a quick smile that faded fast. The place was a narrow two-bedroom in an older neighborhood. Wood floors, high ceilings, a long hallway. The kitchen opened to a small porch, the yard sloping to a vine-choked fence. It smelled of dust and dish soap. Tom listed the rent, utilities, and said he'd be gone for a week after I moved in. He worked contracts, out of state, odd hours. We signed a simple lease that he printed at the library. The landlord was just a name in a mailbox nearby. I moved in with 2 duffels and a box of books. I bought a cheap bed frame that creaked, a used dresser, and a lamp with a crooked shade. My mom's chipped ceramic leaf dish held my keys and wallet. I kept my phone on silent out of pride. The first week alone was what I needed. I worked, cooked simple meals, wiped counters, and played music low. I started running again. Everything had a place. I told myself I'd made the right choice. Then small things felt off. The front door's lock was stubborn. You had to pull the door slightly to turn the key. I mastered it by day 2. But on day 5, the lock turned too easily, the door loose. I blamed humid weather and bought a new deadbolt, installing it myself, half proud, half wary. At night, the hallway carried sounds, a drip, a tick, the house settling. One faint noise stood out, soft scuffs like socked feet on floorboards. I traced it to Tom's door, standing in the dark with my phone's light aimed at the crack below. The house breathed. I heard nothing more. I told myself it was the air vent. I laughed a single breath. When Tom returned, he was in and out. Quick showers, laundry, sleep. He talked about airports and bad clients. He was easy to live with, not messy or loud. He left again 2 days later. This time, the quiet felt thin, stretched tight. One morning, my keys weren't in the dish, but on the kitchen counter. I couldn't recall moving them. Maybe I was tired carrying groceries. I returned them to the dish and vowed to be careful. 2 nights later, a book on my nightstand was off. I always left it face down, receipt bookmark poking out. I woke to it, shifted closer to the lamp, receipt tucked deeper. It was so slight I doubted my memory. I told myself I bumped it. I told myself it was nothing. A week later, I woke before dawn, certain I dreamed someone in the hallway. The feeling clung. I opened my door slowly. Streetlight striped the floor through the blinds. Tom's door was shut. No sound. My heart slowed. I drank water, went back to bed, and lay awake until my alarm. When Tom returned, he looked drained, carrying a small bag. Over breakfast, he said something that stuck. If you hear anything from my room when I'm gone, don't worry. My friend stays over sometimes. I kept my face neutral. Friend, he smiled thinly. Yeah, just sometimes. No big deal. He changed the topic fast. He left that afternoon. That night, I stood in the hallway staring at his door. Sometimes bothered me. No schedule. A stranger in my house without warning. I messaged my college friend. He said Tom was private, always paid rent, not to worry. I bought a motion sensor camera online, small and simple, sending alerts to my phone. I felt odd unboxing it, but mounted it on a living room shelf, angled to see the hallway, both doors. The first 3 nights, nothing. On the 4th at 3 a.m., my phone buzzed. Motion detected. The video showed an empty hallway, streetlight stripes on wood. Then the camera adjusted focus. From Tom's door, a shadow slid out, human-shaped shoulders, head leaning forward. It stood facing my door, still for over a minute. Then it stepped back. The door closed without a visible hand. I watched the clip 4 times, lights on, pulse loud in my ears. I wanted to check the hallway, but didn't. I wanted to call Tom and my parents, but didn't. I stayed awake until dawn. In the morning, I texted Tom, "Your friend was here last night. Just checking." Hours later, he replied, "Yeah, sometimes he crashes. He's cool. No name, no apology." Anger and fear tangled in my chest. I changed my routine. I kept the keys in my pocket. I slid a chair under my bedroom doorknob at night. I taped a thin strip across my door's crack near the floor, checking it daily. I noticed the house differently. A hallway ceiling hatch led to the attic crawl space. I'd ignored it before. Now, standing beneath it, I saw finger smudges on the dusty panel. I climbed a ladder, felt cool air leaking through, but didn't open it. I put the ladder away. 2 nights later, another camera alert woke me at 5 a.m. The shadow stood in Tom's doorway again, steady watching. Its stillness unnerved me most. I called my friend, saying I wasn't comfortable with someone here when Tom was gone. He suggested talking to Tom, setting boundaries, and getting a lock. He didn't call me paranoid, which helped. I bought a stronger lock for my room. I watched the camera feed like a bad dream. At 2:40 a.m., another alert. The shadow was back, faintly catching streetlight. It felt like I was watching, though that made no sense. My lock held. The tape didn't break. I called Tom in the morning. "I can't have a stranger in the house at night," I said. "He's not a stranger to me," he replied, voice sharp. "He stays sometimes, doesn't bother anything. He stands in your doorway watching the hall," I said. He laughed flat. "You're scaring yourself with that camera." "Tom, I'll be back tomorrow," he said. "We'll talk. It's fine." The next day dragged. When Tom arrived, I felt relief and anger. I demanded answers. He leaned on the counter, eyes tired. "Sometimes a friend crashes. He's between places. He uses my room. That's it. What's his name?" I asked. He stared until the question felt strange. "Not your problem," he said. "He's gone." Chill. That night with Tom home, I slept better and worse. Better for not being alone, worse for what we didn't say. The camera showed nothing. In the morning, Tom left early. I cleaned to take control. Dishes, rugs, baseboards. I paused at Tom's slightly open door. I knocked, pushed it open. His room was plain. Dresser, chair with a jacket, blinds shut. The air was stale. I swept under the window, then saw something under the bed, a dark edge. I lifted the bed skirt. My throat dried. A rolled sleeping bag was strapped tightly against the wall. Beside it, a half-unzipped duffel held clothes. On top, a knife, black handle, no sheath, not for cooking. I didn't touch it. I left, closing the door to its original angle, hands shaking. I texted Tom, "We need to talk now." No reply. 20 minutes passed. He came in fast, eyes on me. "What did you do in my room?" He asked, too calm. I cleaned. I said, "Found a sleeping bag and a knife under your bed." He stared, then smiled tightly. "You shouldn't be in my room." "We agreed on safety," I said. "This isn't safe." He stepped closer, breath sour. "My friend's got a hard life. He needs a place. He keeps things there." "Who is he?" I asked. "Don't worry about it," he said. I packed a bag, called the landlord about the lease, and texted my friend that I was leaving for a few days. Tom paced, drawers opening in his room, the bed frame scraping. That night, I sat with the chair under my doorknob, lock turned, backpack ready. At 2 a.m., Tom's door opened and closed. At 2:31, my phone buzzed. A second sensor above my door showed motion spikes. Soft steps past my door, paused, then continued. The front door opened slowly and shut. I waited 30 minutes, cracked my door. The hallway was empty. From the front window, I saw parked cars, an empty sidewalk, and a cat crossing. No one. In the morning, I left for a motel, paying for 7 nights. I slept with my bag against the door, TV on low. On the 3rd day, I returned at noon for the mail. Tom was gone. The house was hot. I checked his door, knocked and entered. The bed skirt was gone. No sleeping bag, no duffel, no knife. A spare key with a red plastic top sat on the dresser, scratched, not ours. I didn't touch it. I backed out. I changed the front door lock again and sent Tom a photo. He replied, "Cool." I asked if his friend would return. No answer. That night, I thought of the shadow's calm. Calm doesn't mean safe. Calm can mean practiced. I broke the lease with the landlord's help and my friend's support, costing money and pride. Tom didn't fight it. Texting, no hard feelings. I left the camera in its box, a reminder I might need it again. The lesson is small. Ask questions. Trust a lock's feel. A book's shift, keys misplaced. If your house feels different, believe it. If you find a sleeping bag and a knife under a bed, you didn't find the start. You found the middle. The beginning happened while you slept. The rest was already coming. Soft steps in a dark hallway, steady, sure. This was in 2025 in Minneapolis. I was living in a 3-story brown brick apartment building just off Nicollet Avenue. It wasn't fancy, but it was cheap, and the landlord mostly left everyone alone. My unit was 2B. The one next to me, 2A, was rented by two guys, Sincere Porter and Abdurrahman Adraman. I didn't know them well, not really. We weren't friends, just neighbors who shared a wall and a hallway that always smelled faintly of stale cigarette smoke and whatever curry the people in 3A were cooking. We'd do the awkward little nod and smile thing when we passed each other on the stairs. That was about it. Abdurrahman was the one I saw more often. He worked odd hours just as I did. He was a tall, skinny guy, probably in his late 20s, with kind eyes that always seemed a little tired. He drove a beat-up silver Honda that had a permanent spot on the street right under my window. Sometimes late at night, I'd be up watching TV, and I'd hear him pull in, the car door creaking shut, followed by the jingle of his keys as he walked up to the building. It was one of those familiar, comforting sounds of a shared living space. Sincere was more of a mystery. He was shorter than Abdurrahman, stockier, with a way of looking at you that made you feel like you were being sized up. He didn't seem to have a regular job. His car, a newer-looking black Nissan, would be there for days at a time and then gone for a whole weekend. I mostly saw him when he was coming or going, usually on his phone, talking in a low, intense voice. He never did the nod and smile. He just looked straight through you and keep walking. The whole thing started, as far as I can tell, in late summer. It was one of those sticky August nights. The air was thick and heavy, and I had my window open, trying to catch a breeze that wasn't there. I heard them come in, their voices louder than usual, carrying clearly through the thin walls. "I told you, man, I'll get you next week," Abdurrahman was saying. His voice was placating, reasonable. Next week. You always say that." Sincere's voice was different. It had a hard, sharp edge to it that I hadn't heard before. "It's $15, man. Just give me my money. I don't have it right now. I had to send some back home. You know how it is. I know you went out last. I saw the pictures on your social media. You got money for that, but not for me. That was just a couple of things with friends, man. Come on." There was a pause, and then the sound of their apartment door slamming shut. It was so loud it made my own walls vibrate. I remember thinking it was a stupid thing to argue about. $15. It was less than the price of a movie ticket. I figured they'd get over it. Roommates fight about dumb stuff all the time. I know I did back in college, but they didn't get over it. That $15 became a character in our lives, an unwelcome guest in the hallway. I'd hear it brought up at all hours in the morning as they were leaving late at night when they came home. It was always the same conversation, the same script. Abdurrahman, apologetic and tired, sincere, angry, and insistent. The argument never got physical. Not then. It was just this low, simmering poison that seeped through the walls. I started to notice a change in Abdurrahman. The tiredness in his eyes was replaced by a constant, hunted look. He started taking the stairs 2 at a time, almost running as if he was trying to minimize his time in the common areas. One afternoon, I was coming in with groceries and he was just getting out of his car. "Hey," I said, doing the neighborly thing. He jumped, startled, and then gave me a weak smile. "Oh, hey man, everything all right?" I asked. I don't know why I did. It wasn't my business, but he just looked so worn down. He glanced up at their apartment window, a flicker of something. Fear, maybe, in his eyes. "Yeah, man. Just, long week." He hurried past me into the building without another word. Sincere, on the other hand, seemed to be feeding on the tension. He started hanging out in the common hallway right outside their door. He'd just stand there leaning against the wall, scrolling on his phone, but he wasn't really looking at it. His eyes would be fixed on the stairwell, waiting. Every time I had to walk past him, the hair on my arms would stand up. He wouldn't say anything. He'd just watch me go by with that cold, flat stare. It felt like he was guarding his territory, and his territory was that $15. The landlord sent out a building-wide text one day about keeping the hallways clear of personal items. I think someone else must have complained. For a couple of days, Sincere stopped his hallway vigil. The silence was almost more unnerving than the arguments. Then came the night it happened. It was a Tuesday. The weather had just turned and a cold, miserable rain was slicking the streets. I'd gotten home from work around 9, made myself some dinner, and settled onto the couch to watch some dumb show on Netflix. Around 11, I heard them come in. Their footsteps were heavy on the stairs, and I could hear their voices before they even reached our floor. It was the $15 argument again, but this time the volume was cranked all the way up. "You think I'm playing?" Sincere was yelling, not just talking loudly, but full-on screaming in the hallway, yelling, "This is the last time I'm asking you, Abdurrahman. Where is my money? I don't have it." Abdurrahman yelled back, his voice cracking with desperation, "I don't have it right now. I get paid on Friday so I can give it to you then." My blood ran cold. This was different. This wasn't a roommate squabble anymore. I muted my TV. Every nerve in my body was on high alert. I found myself creeping from my couch to my front door, moving silently like an intruder in my own home. "Friday, you think I'm a joke? You've been saying that for 2 months. What do you want me to do?" "I don't have it." I put my eye to the peephole. The fisheye lens distorted the hallway, making it look long and warped. I could see them standing in front of their door just a few feet from mine. Abdurrahman had his back to their door, his hands held up in a pleading gesture. Sincere was crowding him, his body tense, his face twisted with a rage that was terrifying to see, even through the tiny lens. I should have called the cops right then. I know that. I think about that moment all the time. Maybe if I had, Abdurrahman would still be alive, but I just stood there frozen. You tell yourself it's not your business. You tell yourself you're overreacting. You tell yourself it'll blow over. "I'm done asking," Sincere said, his voice dropping to a low, menacing growl. And then it happened. It was so fast I almost didn't process it. Sincere's arm moved, a quick, brutal flash of motion. It wasn't a punch, it was something else. Abdurrahman made a sound. It wasn't a scream, it was a sharp, choked gasp like the wind had been knocked out of him. He staggered back against the door, his eyes wide with shock and disbelief. He looked down at his stomach, and I saw a dark, stained blossom on his t-shirt. My mind refused to accept what I was seeing. It felt like I was watching a movie, something fake and staged. But the smell that hit me, even through the door, was real. It was the coppery metallic smell of blood. Sincere didn't say another word. He just stood there for a second, watching Abdurrahman slide down the door to the floor. His face was completely blank. No anger, no remorse, nothing. Then he turned and walked calmly down the stairs and out the front door of the building. He didn't even run. I was glued to the peephole. My breath caught in my throat. Abdurrahman was on the floor on his side, his legs drawn up. He was making these awful, wet, gurgling sounds. I could see his hand pressed against his stomach, his fingers slick with red. That's when I started noticing the details. The way the overhead light glinted off the keys, still clutched in Abman's other hand. The scuff mark on the floor next to his head, the one that looked like Florida, his beat-up sneakers, the frayed hem of his jeans. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold my phone. I fumbled it out of my pocket, my thumb slipping on the screen. I finally managed to dial 911. My voice came out as a strangled whisper. "My neighbor, I think, has been stabbed." The operator started asking me questions, but I couldn't answer. All I could do was stare through the peephole at the scene in the hallway. The gurgling sounds had stopped. Abdurrahman was completely still. The silence that followed was the loudest, most horrible sound I have ever heard. The police and paramedics were there in what felt like seconds, but also an eternity. I opened my door to a hallway filled with blue uniforms and chaos. They worked on him right there on the floor, but I knew it was too late. I saw the look on the paramedic's face. They took me to the station to give a statement. I told them everything I saw, everything I heard. I told them about the $15. The detective just nodded, writing in his little notepad like it was the most normal thing in the world. They told me later they'd arrested Sincere a few blocks away. He was just sitting in his car. They also told me the whole thing, the argument, the stabbing. Everything was caught on the surveillance camera the landlord had installed in the hallway a year earlier. I moved out a month after that. I couldn't stay. I couldn't walk down that hallway without seeing him lying there. I couldn't look at the door to apartment 2A without feeling sick to my stomach. They had to replace a whole section of the carpet, but I could still see the faint outline of the stain underneath. Sometimes when I can't sleep, I think about it. I think about Abdurrahman's tired eyes and Sincere's empty stare. I think about how a human life with all its hopes and problems and little joys can be extinguished for the price of a cheap lunch. It's not the violence that haunts me the most. It's the sheer pointless banality of it. It's knowing that the line between a normal Tuesday night and a nightmare is so thin it can be erased in a single stupid moment. All over $15. I never thought I'd end up sharing a house with someone like Chris. We met through a Craigslist ad back in 2022. I was 28, working as a delivery driver for Amazon in Seattle, and needed a cheap place to live after my last roommate bailed. The rent was too high for one person, so I posted an ad for a roommate. Chris responded first. He seemed normal, a 32-year-old guy who worked night shifts at a Walmart warehouse. He said he was quiet, paid bills on time, and didn't party. We met at a Starbucks near the house, and he checked out. No red flags. We shook hands, and he moved in the next week. The house was an old 2-story rental in a quiet suburb called Reeton, about 20 minutes from downtown Seattle. It had a small basement that we barely used, mostly for storage, like old boxes and a broken washing machine. The main floor had the kitchen, living room, and my bedroom. Chris took the upstairs room. We shared the bathroom and kept to ourselves mostly. I'd come home from deliveries exhausted, microwave a frozen pizza from Costco, and crash on the couch watching Netflix. Chris would leave for work around 8 p.m. and get back at dawn. Our schedules didn't overlap much, which was fine by me. At first, everything was smooth. Chris was tidy. He'd wash his dishes right after eating, and he even mowed the lawn once a month without me asking. We talked sometimes about the Seahawks games or how gas prices were killing my delivery routes. He mentioned he grew up in Portland, moved to Seattle for better jobs, but didn't share much else. I didn't pry. I'm not the nosy type. But after a couple of months, little things started bothering me. Nothing big, just off. Like I'd hear noises from the basement at night, thumps or muffled sounds like someone moving furniture. The first time I thought it was the house settling old places creak, right? I mentioned it to Chris one morning when he was making coffee with his Keurig machine. "Hey, you hear that banging downstairs last night?" He paused, then shrugged. "Probably rats or something. I'll set some traps from Home Depot." He did buy traps, the kind with peanut butter bait, and placed them down there. The noises stopped for a week, so I forgot about it. Then the smell started. A faint musty odor is coming up from the basement stairs. Not like mold, more like sweat or unwashed clothes. I noticed it when I went down to grab some old tools for fixing my bike. The basement was dim, lit by a single bulb, and cluttered with our stuff. Chris had added a few boxes of his own, labeled books and clothes. I didn't touch them, but the smell was stronger down there. I asked him about it. "Dude, something stinks in the basement. You notice?" He laughed it off. "Yeah, it must be those traps. Caught a couple of rats already. I'll clean it up." He did spray some freeze and it got better. I let it go. Life went on. I got busier with work. Amazon was ramping up for holiday deliveries, and Chris seemed the same. But he started acting a bit weird. He'd lock his bedroom door even when he was home, which he never did before. And he'd carry groceries down to the basement sometimes. Not a lot. A bag of chips from Lay's, some bottled water, maybe a loaf of bread. I saw him once when I came home early. "Storing food down there?" I asked, half joking. He nodded quickly. "Yeah, emergency stash. You never know with earthquakes around here." Seattle does have quake risks, so it made sense. I even thought about doing the same. The noises came back after that. Not every night, but often enough. I'd be in bed scrolling on my iPhone and hear a low thump or scrape from below. Once it sounded like a whisper or murmur, I sat up, heart pounding a little, but convinced myself it was the wind or pipes. I didn't want to be paranoid. Chris was a good roommate, always paid rent via Venmo on the first. No drama. One weekend in early 2023, I had a day off and decided to clean the house. I vacuumed with my Dyson, dusted the shelves, and thought about tackling the basement. Chris was at work, so I went down. The smell hit me again, stronger, like body odor mixed with something sour. I flipped on the light and looked around. His boxes were still there, but one was open. Inside were wrappers from McDonald's, Big Mac boxes, fry containers. Odd since he usually ate upstairs, and there was a blanket folded neatly like it had been used. I felt uneasy, but didn't snooze anymore. Maybe he napped down there sometimes. Weird, but harmless. I set up a few more rat traps and went back up. That night, the noises were louder, a definite thud than silence. I texted Chris. "Basement sounds again. Rat's back? He replied hours later. On it? Don't worry. Things escalated slowly. I started noticing Chris looked tired all the time. Dark circles under his eyes like he wasn't sleeping. He'd snap at small things like if I left a cup in the sink. Clean up, man, he'd say sharply. Not like him. And the power bill went up. I checked the energy app. Extra usage at night. I asked him if he was running something downstairs. Just a fan to air it out, he said. Plausible. By summer, I was getting suspicious. The smells were constant now, and I'd hear what sounded like footsteps, soft, pacing ones. One night, I couldn't sleep. It was hot, even for Seattle, and I had my window open. Around 2 a.m., I heard a voice from the basement vent, muffled but human, like someone talking low. My heart raced. I grabbed my phone and crept downstairs in my socks, trying not to make noise. The basement door was locked. Chris had added a padlock recently, saying it was for security. I pressed my ear to the door. Silence, then a cough. Definite human cough. I backed away, mind spinning. Was he hiding a pet, a dog or something? But why hide it? Or maybe a girlfriend staying over without telling me. That would be rude, but not crazy. I didn't confront him right away. I waited till morning. When he got home, I said casually over breakfast, I was eating Cheerios. Hey, I thought I heard someone down there last night. You got company? He froze, spooned midway to his mouth. Then he smiled. Nah, man, probably the TV. I left it on down there sometimes to scare rats. There was no TV in the basement. I knew that, but I nodded, pretending to buy it. Cool. After that, I started paying attention. I'd listen at the door when he was out. Sometimes I'd hear movement. Once a soft sob that chilled me. I Googled on my laptop, roommate hiding something in the basement. Lots of Reddit stories, drugs, stolen goods, even bodies. But that was paranoia. Chris wasn't a criminal, or was he? I checked his background quietly. Used a site, paid $20 for a report. Nothing major, a speeding ticket from 2019. No arrests, relieved but still uneasy. The noises kept coming. And now Chris was home more, calling out sick from work a few times. He'd go downstairs for hours, door locked. One evening I came home late from a long delivery shift. The house was dark. I flipped on the kitchen light and saw mud tracks on the floor leading to the basement, fresh like someone had been outside. Chris's car was in the driveway, but he wasn't upstairs. I heard voices below, his and another. Low arguing, then a thump, like something falling. I panicked a bit, grabbed my keys, and went outside pretending to check the mail. When I came back, the tracks were wiped up, and Chris was in the living room watching ESPN on TV. Hey, he said normally. I mumbled hi and went to my room. That night, I barely slept. The next day, I decided to investigate. While Chris was at Walmart, I checked his schedule on the fridge. I picked the basement lock. I'd watched a YouTube tutorial on my phone using a paperclip tension wrench from my toolbox. It took 10 minutes, but it worked. Heart pounding, I opened the door and went down. The basement was the same, cluttered, but now there was a cot in the corner, hidden behind boxes, a dirty blanket on it, a pillow from IKEA, empty food wrappers everywhere, sandwiches, Coke cans, and chains. Metal chains bolted to the wall with cuffs. My stomach dropped. What the hell? Then I saw it. A notebook on the floor, Chris's handwriting. I flipped it open. Dates, notes. Day 47, quiet today, fed at 6 p.m. Day 52, tried to scream, gagged. Oh God, he was keeping someone down here. A person. I heard the front door upstairs. Chris came home early, panic surged. I pocketed the notebook, turned off the light, and hid behind some boxes. Footsteps on the stairs. The door creaked open. Light on. Chris came down carrying a bag. He went to the cot area. Time to eat, he muttered. Then a weak voice. Please let me go. A woman's voice. Horse scared. Chris laughed low. Not yet. We're not done. I froze, barely breathing. He fed her. I heard chewing, sobbing. Then he chained her back up. I waited 20 minutes, then snuck out. Upstairs, Chris was in his room. I grabbed my phone and ran to my car, drove to a nearby park, shaking, called 911 emergency services. My roommate has someone in the basement, chained up. I saw it. They asked questions, addressed names, sent officers. I waited in the park, terrified, but it was too late. When police arrived, Chris had fled. They found the woman, Rachel, 25, who was kidnapped from a bus stop in Tacoma 2 months ago. She'd been reported missing, but I never connected it. She was alive, but traumatized, dehydrated, bruised. Chris had heard me leave and suspected something. He unchained her, but she was too weak to run. He left her there, took his car, vanished. Police questioned me. I gave them the notebook. They searched the house, found more evidence. Duct tape, ropes. That night, I stayed at a motel. Couldn't go back. But Chris wasn't done. Around 3 a.m., my phone buzzed. Unknown number. You shouldn't have snooped. I called the police again. They said, stay put. The next morning, I went to the house with the officers to pack my stuff. The door was ajar. Inside, mess, drawers open. Chris had come back. As I grabbed clothes from my room, I heard a creak turned. Chris lunged from the closet, knife in hand. You ruined everything, he screamed. I dodged, but he slashed my arm. Blood pain. I yelled, grabbed a lamp, a cheap one from Target, and swung. Hit his head. He stumbled. Officers rushed in and tackled him. He fought, but they cuffed him. Paramedics bandaged me. 10 stitches. Chris was arrested, charged with kidnapping and assault. Rachel testified. He's in prison now. I moved out and got therapy through Kaiser Permanente. Still have nightmares, the slow build, noises, smells, suspicion.